Now, Moscow accused the United States of masterminding a drone attack on the Kremlin, a charge denied by Washington, and said Ukrainian sabotage had reached unprecedented momentum. Russia said it reserves the right to retaliate, and hardliners, including former President Medvedev, have said it should now physically eliminate Volodymyr Zelensky. Dubbing US as the mastermind, Kremlin spokesperson said, and I'm quoting him, "Decisions on such attacks are not made in Kiev, but in Washington." Hitting out, the Kremlin spokesperson said Kiev only does what it is told to do. The White House has dismissed Russia's claims, saying the US was not involved in the incident in any way. White House Security Advisor John Kirby criticized the Kremlin spokesperson's remark as bold, blatant lie. Throughout its offensive in Ukraine, Russia has maintained that Kiev is taking orders from the United States. Moscow has been accusing the West of leading a war against Russia by proxy. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell warned Moscow not to use the attack as an excuse to escalate the conflict. Russian television on Thursday showed Putin in the Kremlin for the first time since the drone attack. The Kremlin attack came after 5 days of apparent sabotage attacks, including trains derailed by explosions and massive fires in annexed Crimea. Russia is preparing to mark one of its main holidays on May 9th. Victory Day marks the Soviet win over the Nazis in World War II. Russia has opened a terrorism probe into the Moscow attack. And for more on this, joining us now live from Oslo is Glenn Deason. He's a professor of international relations, University of Southeastern Norway. Glenn, welcome to WION World is One, and thank you very much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me on.
Let me just start by asking you, how do you feel, or what is your reaction to the ongoing spat between the United States and Russia over the drone attack?
Well, I think that this is a very dangerous trend because in this war, the US tends to supply the weapons and also provide intelligence about the target, which leaves Ukraine to merely pull the trigger. Now, this is what's dangerous about a proxy war. That is, when does the US cross the line of a proxy war and becomes a direct war? We don't really have clear rules for this. When you add drones and such, it makes it more complex. And I think that the United States has crossed almost every Russian red line. And my theory is that at some point Russia will reach the conclusion that the risk of allowing the US to act with impunity becomes greater than the risk of striking back at the US and thus risking a larger war. So I think this is why Russia was prepared to fire on British warships, or when Russia took down the American drone over the Black Sea, which was picking targets for Ukraine. This is the main concern, that we might now be crossing that line and Russia might hit back at who it sees in its language to be the puppet master.
Glenn, we'll go back to what Moscow said, that it will react following this drone strike. But White House has denied any involvement in this recent strike. What do you make of that?
Well, they would, obviously. This is they would never admit to it. But we know from the past that the American media has already revealed that it was their intelligence that were used to destroy the Moskva warship. It was their intelligence that were used to kill Russian military leaders, their generals. It was also likely American intelligence that led to the mass killing of Russian soldiers at this New Year's event. And also when Ukrainian drones struck the Engels military base of Russia, a key base, by the way, for Russia's nuclear deterrent, well, it's also highly likely that this must have been American intelligence that provided the information on where the weak spots was in Russian defenses. So it's very reasonable to assume that the Americans also had a role in this attack on the Kremlin. However, it's not confirmed. I haven't seen any evidence of it. But I'm just saying there's a good reason for this. And I guess the problem here in the West that no one can point out how dangerous this proxy war is becoming without being accused of then taking the side of Russia and then, having their professional reputation destroyed or being cancelled.
Glenn, finally, Russia has promised a retaliation to this drone strike. Should the world be worried of what Moscow is going to do next? And what does this mean in the current ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, it's unclear how the Russians will retaliate. Again, their main challenge is to find a balance between not starting a wider war or unleashing a nuclear exchange with the West, but on the other hand, they can't let NATO and the US act with impunity of striking them, because again, this is what the Americans have been quite open about this. That is, Lloyd Austin, their defense minister, has made it clear that their objective in this war is to permanently weaken Russia. You have Republican leaders like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell saying that, you know, the objective here should be to fight Russia, and you know, that they have a great agreement with Ukraine. They will fight to the last Ukrainian, and America will provide the weapons. Even retired U.S. General Kellogg said that this is a good war because now the United States can knock out the Russians with Ukrainians and instead focus on China. So they're very open about this being a proxy war. So at some point Russia has to respond. Now, how it would respond, you know, I could only speculate. But I'm guessing they will have to raise the stakes in order to deter the United States from deepening its involvement.
Glenn Deason, thank you very much for talking to WION World is One today.
My pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.